You do good.
It's on camera. He said I do good. Thank you.
I say that all the time. It doesn't have to be on camera. You don't need evidence.
Now it is.
Now you know.
Okay, so we were recently at a social gathering, and there was a conversation happening on the other side of the room. We weren't a part of it, but the school came up, as it often does, and there was this awesome mom there. She's currently homeschooling her children, and there was talk about Acton, and she said, "I just don't know why I would pay for it when I can just do it myself." So I was glad we weren't in the conversation, because that would have been super awkward. Maybe she wouldn't have said it if we were in the conversation.
No.
But we thought it might be interesting to share our reasons for going from homeschool,
Public school.
public school and charter, traditional, to homeschool, to starting Acton. And there are 3 main reasons why we felt like we could not provide for our children at home, even if I was doing it really well, which I don't really feel like I was. And that's why we needed Acton. So, start us off with the first one.
Well, before I do, I want to make sure that you understand that the face that I just pulled was not me saying, yeah, you did a terrible job. It was actually disagreeing with what you were saying.
What face did you pull?
Don't worry about that. You'll see it in the edit.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so the first and probably the biggest thing, and it's what we've always called the secret sauce of Acton, is Socratic discussions. Now, obviously, with your family or even a group of families, you could have a Socratic discussion, even if you did it regularly with the same people.
So if you don't remember what a Socratic discussion is, it's a conversation asked about really any topic. The most important thing is that there's no right or wrong answer. So what's the common example that we always give?
Cats or dogs?
Yeah, which is better, cats or dogs? There's no right or wrong answer. There's not.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a good question. You have a strong opinion, other people do, you can change your mind. It creates an interesting discourse about why people have the opinion they do. So that's the basic form of Socratic discussion.
Yeah, and so there's so many powerful things that come from Socratic discussions. Maybe one of the most important things that we think comes from it are in the rules of engagement, which are the rules that are established before you even begin a discussion in a group. Now at Acton, those rules are established by the learners. The beginning of the year, they sit down and they're given some examples of things that they could put in their rules of engagement.
What's your favorite one? What's your favorite rule of engagement?
Well, it depends on who we're talking to, but for adults, my favorite one is take a strong stand, no fence sitting. And the reason that is my favorite, used to be least favorite, is because adults like to be right. We don't like to be wrong or make a decision that is incorrect. And so we often find ourselves on the fence.
Saying both cats and dogs are equally
they're
great.
Both great, and it's a terrible question. Well, if we have people saying it's a terrible question because both of them are great, we actually know that we've got a really good question.
They don't want to choose.
Yes.
And so that's good. That leaves the wrestling.
So adults really wrestle with that. Anyway, so the learners are less resistant to that particular rule. But there's other rules that I really like that I think are maybe far more important and further reaching. For example, link to previous comments, begin with I agree or I disagree.
I disagree.
That we've lost as a people. In fact, it is probably that skill that has driven us, at least me, I think probably us, I'm going to speak for us.
I don't know what you're saying. Let's see.
To feel so strongly about moving this mission forward at a rapid pace.
Because what do you see in society that feels so off?
You look at we'll take the political landscape, which is feels like it should be a hyperbolic example. I don't know if I used that word right, but it sounded good.
Get up.
It's a hyperbole example, but it's very, very real. You go from the summer riots from I don't know, a couple summers ago. I don't remember what year it was, 2019, to January 6th, and you've got both sides of the political aisle using violence to move forward a message, and neither one of those are correct. They're both wrong.
Yeah, the basic skill is that it's not okay to disagree. I think you're a bad person because you don't agree with me. Therefore, I can justify doing all kinds of evil things. When really, it just comes down to we disagree.
Yeah.
And we could be friends.
And
still,
and likely
actually.
and most of that comes because we don't hear one another, which is another one of the rules of engagement, right? We listen intently with an open mind. We consider evidence and reasoning. So all of these rules come together to form this discussion that really are building tools for them to be able to go out and lead in society, to be able to hear somebody else, to be able to articulate an argument or a position concisely and without, just blabbing forever, which I haven't mastered yet. Anyway, taking a strong stand and not fence sitting, but then being willing to change your mind, even if you felt very strongly before.
So why didn't you feel like we could just do that in our home?
Multiple reasons, but probably the biggest one is it becomes an echo chamber. Um, there's no diversity of thought or opinion, or at least very little, until they become teenagers, and then there's a ton of diversity of thought. But that's often when people are saying, "Hey, I want to send my child to Acton."
Well, and if you are the leader of the Socratic discussion, it's important that you actually don't have an opinion. And as a parent trying to hold this discussion, you are an authority figure. And if your child says something that you disagree with or might be against your family rules, now you're in a really tough position, because either you don't have a true Socratic forum where you can speak your mind and listen openly and consider new evidence, or you don't make sure that you help your child understand your family's values and beliefs. So almost impossible. We even talked about, even if we had a co-op group, the ideas will likely be pretty aligned. And it felt really important to us that our children were able to take the values that we emphasize in our home into a new setting, hear other points of view, and then find their own truth in that.
Yeah, land where they're going to land, and hopefully be even stronger in the values that we've instilled. If as long as the values are sound and everything else. The other danger that you have, and I think that a lot of times you'll have children that are, we'll call them pleasers, that will never actually form their own opinion because they're too worried about pleasing or agreeing with mom or dad or whomever is actually leading the discussion. And so the freedom to be independent, as you were just expressing, is difficult, if not impossible, to instill in your children in your own home. And part of that is because by design, you are the authority figure. It doesn't really matter. Even if you put on the Socratic discussion hat, it's virtually impossible to be a guide and a mom or a dad.
Yeah.
You just
Not in the truest sense of the words that we work to embody at
Right.
Acton.
Right.
I'll just add one other layer before we move on to the next reason. And that's when I was homeschooling, I was looking at critical thinking activities. Like, what are the critical thinking? How could I help my children be critical thinkers? I realized a part of that was one of the most important skills I could help them gain. And I have never, ever, ever seen anything better than Socratic discussions to help them develop these thinking skills. And unless you're doing it in a true Socratic form, they don't get all those benefits. So even if we tried to do it, it would have been selling them short, because we just can't replicate what happens in an organic setting with people from different backgrounds with different ideas, and where it's really safe to try on an idea for a little while to see how it fits you, and then you can just put it back in the box and go out to play. And over time, this forms a really strong moral basis, because you get to wrestle in ways that you don't get to.
Even if you don't vocalize, which is, another reason that, in the home, I don't know about your home, but in my home, it's like my kids don't speak or don't, share. I ask a question and they don't answer. I start getting frustrated or irritated. Like, hey, come on, I just asked you a question. Give me an answer, right? And yeah, that's another thing that the kids might, anyway, the danger that might come from trying to be a parent and a guide. It's really, really hard and challenging.
All right.
You want to take the next one?
Remind me which one.
Oh, accountability.
Okay, so accountability. If you don't know, at Acton, one of the core core reasons
Foci. I
that
think
we
that's
have,
plural for
I have
focus.
used that word before. The reason that the school exists is to develop self-accountability and ownership, and this idea that as a people, as a group, we can also hold each other accountable, that we have rules and things that we've agreed to, and when someone's out of integrity, that it's actually a kindness to say, hey, you aren't living up to the promises. Am I misunderstanding this? Tell me what's going on. Are you okay? Like that, this is a healthy way to be in society as humans. That is what they practice at Acton. And it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of courage. And so a lot of times that's what they're doing at Acton. So transport us now to a home setting to try and develop this skill.
Again, I'll say almost impossible. Not impossible, but very, very difficult. The relationships that siblings have, which is where, if you're at home, even if you're in a co-op, the primary place where most of the opportunities for giving and receiving feedback and holding somebody accountable or holding yourself accountable is going to be with your siblings, assuming you have them. That is going to be where it's going to be. And always have a power dynamic. I'm the oldest child in my family. If my youngest brother, even now, probably, I don't know, if he were to come, and Kevin's his name, if he was to come and say, Brad, you really screwed this up, no matter how nicely he said that, I would be, who are you? What do you mean? Back off. You're younger. You don't know what you're talking about. The age difference and the sibling dynamic because of the relationship within the family, which is why even in our studios, when we have siblings in the studio, that's something that they get to wrestle with as well. Hopefully not in a safer environment, because that's not what we're trying to say. Like, it's not safe at home, but with other people and I guess other options, at least, for somebody else to hold somebody accountable. So if you know that you've got a sticking point with your sibling in our studio, there's 20 other people in the room that can fill that role, and actually getting allies and other people to help, not that they're like lobbying for one another.
So I think it's difficult with siblings and family members to take the feedback you're given, see it as feedback, and then recognize your impact on the group and make changes.
Yeah.
It's easy at home, especially, to be in our home habits. And that's awesome. And it's sometimes hard to change because there are so many things that are static, where at school it's a very dynamic environment. It's different, and they're talking about this ownership often. So it's completely different. Not to mention that then a parent is going to hold you accountable at home in some ways, even if we try not to. We have to.
Yeah,
that takes us right into our third reason.
Yeah, that is your role. Yeah, it's the variety of roles that exist at Acton, the layers that are there, built in on purpose and with intentionality. I wonder, sometimes parents probably, or families, look at what we do. They're like, what do you do?
You don't do anything.
There's some days I actually ask myself that question.
Do you mean like if you're a guide in a studio, they're like, wait, guides don't answer questions, they don't teach, they don't do anything?
I meant you and me, but yes, the guides as well. Yeah, like, what in the world do you guys do? Like, you don't, well, I mean, we actually do interact with learners, but not as often as we used to, I would say. Probably.
It ebbs and flows.
Sure it does. Well, most of the conversations and interactions that we have with learners is because there's been an issue in the studio where somebody's being held accountable, and we get the opportunity then to help them see that actually the choices that they made were not okay, but actually it's okay. Like, everything's fine, and you get to now come up with a different strategy.
Or pitches. If they have to pitch something. Mm-hmm. So this literally happened like 20 minutes ago. A group of learners came to me to pitch something. They wanted to start a fire outside. They had all the safety measures in place. They had made all the commitments. I was like, sure, go make a fire. Now transport me back to being the mom at home if my kid said, hey, we want to make a fire. Like, I'd be like, are you kidding me right now? Like,
maybe. I don't
well,
actually.
most
I don't know that that's true with her. That would have absolutely been me. In fact, I was not completely convinced that Michelle made the right decision 20 minutes ago.
I might not have.
No, she did fine. I do think it's actually funny that they were actually trying to bypass Miss Michelle and come straight to me.
They
which
thought I'd say no.
They did, and they thought I would say yes. And actually, we may have both been in the opposite spaces.
But as a parent dynamic, it's really different because you're not only playing the role of head of school that approves pitches. There's all these other roles that you're playing and trying to juggle that make it really hard to be, I don't know if objective is the right word. Like our guides don't answer questions and they don't teach because their role is to infuse curiosity and inspiration and 100% belief in the learners. And that's like a full-time gig.
Yeah, which is why it's actually kind of funny when parents say, what in the world do guides do? And we're like, I don't really know how to answer that question.
But that can't be the only role happening. There has to be, I guess, kind of what we are.
There has
someone
to be an authority that actually
says
that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then when you try to do this at home, infuse that with the role of mom or dad. You can't wear all of those hats, and so this is why you can't do Acton at home, because those roles cannot all coexist at the same time. It is specifically why, well, we were very intentional when we started our school that Michelle was not going to be a guide, and she would be a phenomenal guide. Like, well, it's more than just nice; it's also true. She would be a phenomenal guide, and we could not function in that role with her being the guide and head of school, and then again, in some cases, even mom. In fact, it's even tricky for us as parents of children of heroes at the school when there's a strike or an owner conference. Like, our guides are like, I don't know what to do with you, you know.
For our kids.
For you, or they're nervous to bring it to their kid. So, you know, imagine if that's all the same person. Like, as the guide, I'm recommending a strike for my child, which is weird in and of itself. And now I need to take it and have an owners conference, which of course you wouldn't have an owners conference and do all those things. You would have discipline. You would enforce whatever it is, because your job as a parent is to make sure that they understand what those boundaries are and that they're absolutely clear, which our parents do quite well. So if you had to do that role, but then also stay in curiosity, but then also, you know, I don't know if I'm even making sense.
I mean, you are to me, but a lot of our lingo is maybe lost.
Yeah,
I think
it's impossible to wear all the hats.
And let me just emphasize why this even matters. So I've seen incredible homeschool families doing amazing things. But I think I said to you this morning, we were thinking about this, that I grew the most in our homeschool journey. But my kids didn't. That was my growth time. And part of the reason is because I was figuring out how to be a culture creator, how to lead our family the direction we wanted to go. And they just followed, you know, well, ducklings do, or they didn't, and that creates that family dynamic. But then when we started a school, they are now learning how to create culture. They're learning how to be a great parent. They are already like equipped with tools that we didn't realize until our 40s. Oh, this is actually a great parenting tool. And they've been doing it in studio. They've been practicing it, not only the accountability part for themselves, but for each other. And that actually is what a parent does. So how can you equip your child to become a great leader when they have this role at home? They can learn leadership skills, sort of, but it's just very dynamic and intricate, and it takes years and years and years and years, and they get so good at it because they just see it. In fact, a lot of times people will go home, or we've had reports that after some weeks in the studio, the children come home and say, we need a contract in our family. We need a different work plan. And then they are leading the meetings literally after a few weeks of seeing some of the systems that work. They're ready to go lead. So do you want to add anything?
Well, I mean, we can tell you story after story after story where we've seen that happen and from, oh man, I'm thinking about William, needing peace in at home,
Little. He
And
went like this because he was like
yeah,
four,
sorry, you
3
couldn't
or
see it
4.
down there, but yeah, he's like super, super, super little, and just went to find peace, and that infused peace into the family dynamic and the situation that was happening at the time, and
That was a skill he was practicing
um,
at school.
at school on a daily basis. And none of this is to say that incredible parents cannot do homeschooling successfully. The distinction that we really need, that we're trying to draw here, is that you cannot do Acton at home.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not something that can be done. Your parents, your children will ask you to not guide them, which we get all the time. Stop guiding me, Mom. We're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. Here's what it is, and deal with it. Maybe that's bad too. I don't know, but it's just not something that can be duplicated
Without
outside of a community that of people that are coming together, and that is one of the most amazing things. I mean, Michelle mentioned that we're figuring this stuff out in our 40s, almost 50. That we're just now figuring this out now, and being approached by parents who, or rather by people who aren't even parents yet, saying, I'm thinking about Acton, I really like everything that's going on there, and I'm scratching my head saying, what
How do you even know
boat did I miss? Because I didn't even consider any of it. Like, none of this was even in my space, until all of a sudden here it was. This call to adventure had to smack me upside the head in order for me to go down this hero's journey, I guess. I don't know. I'm just slow. But I'm grateful that we're here, and grateful for the people that we continue to meet, that are unbelievably intentional parents. There's something new about this next generation, which again is why I feel there's a wave coming, because people are seeing it, and it's becoming more and more apparent that something different has to happen. And we're on this mission because we want to help save our society from the trajectory that we're currently on. A society, a civilization of people that don't hear one another anymore at all. And the moment that we start hearing a difference of opinion or the words "I disagree," that's a person I can no longer associate with or sit down at the table with and have conversations. I mean, some of the news reports that came out of this last election, regardless of where you ended up, people saying, I can't eat dinner with that person, or I'm not going to go to Thanksgiving. I'm not going to go to Thanksgiving with my family because of the way they voted.
We have different.
Yeah, and it's like, that's wrong. Like, there's not a whole lot anymore. I mean, there's plenty of things that I will say are wrong. Cats or dogs, right? I know which one's right. But there's not a lot of things that I will just absolutely declare that are wrong, but that is absolutely wrong to be in that space. And our society needs a major shift. In order for that to happen, we need those that are leaders and intentionally moving in a direction. We also need those that aren't there yet, that are struggling but striving. And without both, we can't create this new society. Like, we need both. And that's
Had this wise, hilarious parent, and I didn't really get it at the time, but looking back, she's exactly right. She said, I teach my child, I teach her our values, I teach her this. I sent her to Acton to practice living the things I'm teaching her. It's a training ground, a practice ground where it's really safe to fail. It's really safe to not get it right and to get it right. And as a parent, I'm like, I actually really need that. I need a place for my children. What's it called? Like a place where simulation? Like a simulation for life where they're going to face real world hard things without my protection. And then they're going to, face it. And then we get to talk about it. We get to debrief. And I get to cheer them on. Again, that separation of roles and a place where they can go and learn who they are and really grow into themselves, not separate from me, but alongside. So that is our goal, is to be partners with parents in providing a place for your child to practice the things that you're working on at home. We want to be running partners with you to help your family fulfill who you want to become. That's all.
That's all. Thank you.
No last words, huh?
No.
All right, come visit us if you want to know more about Acton, if you want to have a trial day for your child, or just want to come have an introduction and have a Socratic discussion with us. That's what we do at our introduction meetings. So schedule. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.